Lift Events and Experiences, known for Canada's #1 cannabis conference and trade shows, is hosting a full slate of events in 2023 and expanding to the U.S. And you're invited. Lift welcomes everyone from legacy participants to multi-state operators to everyday folks who enjoy and respect the plant. Join us in lifting the cannabis community together January 12th through the 14th in Vancouver, then Toronto in June, and San Francisco in August. Visit liftevents.com for details. That's liftevents.com.
Autism and epilepsy have some type of relationship, so they're looking into that also, and it's there's a lot to be learned about autism, and also you have to think too the diet that your child is on too, because diet also plays a big role on how your body reacts and how your brain reacts. So what we put in our bodies also can be something that we also look at as well.
Welcome to the Miracle Plant Podcast, the show that inspires, promotes, and gives you a daily dose of inspiration from the people who have used cannabis to change their lives in extraordinary ways. Here's your host, Justin Benton.
Welcome back to the Miracle Plant Podcast, where we discuss this miracle plant with so many names and how it's helping people in so many extraordinary ways. Well, today we have a very special guest who's been on Dr. Oz 5 times. We have Dr. Oz fans here a lot. Dr. Fab Mancini's been on a few times as well and written over 20 published books. Stacey Chillemi is an amazing, accomplished writer and just has an amazing story and amazing insights to share with all of us about natural-based herbal expert. She's got multiple books that she's come out with, the Complete Herbal Guide. She's, like I said, been on TV shows and radio shows and all over the world, and she's a specialist as well when it comes to epilepsy, which, as many of you know who listen to this podcast, is the reason why hemp and cannabis is legal in our country, because it was so profoundly just black and white that this miracle plant was helping children like Charlotte Figi with epilepsy and seizures, and that was the beginning of the passing of the 2014 Farm Bill, which allowed hemp to be started to be grown legally again, and of course recreational marijuana began to become legal in different states like Colorado and Oregon and California, because we could not deny the facts of this plant helping children and adults and pets with epilepsy. So welcome to the show, Stacey Chillemi. Welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us about what you've been up to. And we'd just love to hear how you got to where you are.
Thank you so much, Justin, for having me on the show. This has been a wonderful opportunity for me, and it's a pleasure to be able to speak with you today. It basically all began at the age of 5. My mother heard a gurgling sound in the other room, so she came to check on me. At that time, had an ear infection and a little virus, and the virus had traveled to my brain. And she had found me in my room turning blue and in a grand mal seizure. So they rushed me to the hospital, and that's when they realized that the virus had traveled into my brain, and they induced me into a coma. I was in a coma for about 4 days, and they told my parents, most likely if she comes out of this coma, she'll be paraplegic or she'll have severe brain damage. And my father, who's from Greece, he was thinking about an island that he came from, and they have one church there, and there was a statue where tears used to roll down these statue's eyes, and he was praying for me to be okay and come out of this coma. And I had a teardrop roll from my eye, and I opened my eyes up, and I didn't have I actually, the first thing I asked for was McDonald's French fries. So I opened my eyes and I asked for McDonald's French fries, and I wasn't paraplegic. I didn't have severe brain damage, but I did have epilepsy. And to this day, they can't find the scar tissue damage that causes the epilepsy, but it stayed with me for a very long time. My life was like a roller coaster ride, and college was very challenging. The late night study and the stress to do well caused lots of seizures. And at that time, wasn't even sure that I'd be able to complete college. And I had written an article and sent it into the Epilepsy Foundation. Back then, they had a magazine, and I asked people, how do you cope with epilepsy? Because back then, they only had like 5 or 6 books on epilepsy, and they were written in medical terminology by doctors, and it went completely over your head if you were just the normal individual. So I wrote the asking other people how they cope with it, and to my surprise, hundreds of letters from all over the United States and Canada came, and I read them, and I learned so much from them. It was such inspiring and motivatable stories, and I took a lot of what I learned from them and applied it to my own life, and it helped me get through school. And then I started working in New York, and I was working for a big corporation, and I felt an aura coming on one day, and I had fell to the ground, and a producer had just walked right over me and kept walking, and I couldn't believe it because I was awake and conscious during the seizure, and I couldn't believe that this producer just walked right over me and kept walking. So I got up and I just continued to do what I was doing. And then a co-producer came over and said, I'm so sorry, but we're going to have to release you from your position. You don't meet the qualifications. And I knew right then and there it was because they saw me have a seizure, but I didn't let it get me down. I kept doing what I was doing. I walked out of there with my head up high, and I started to write, and I started to do freelance work, and I met an herbalist, and he asked me to do a lot of research and writing for him on herbals and natural healing and alternative medicine. And I was really intrigued by it. I said, wow, some of this stuff could actually help me. And I applied it to my own life. And surprisingly, my seizures went from 12 to 9 to 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 to none. And, the combination of the medications I was taking and living a natural and healthy lifestyle, applying detox to my life and changing my lifestyle and living my life a certain way and including vitamins that I was deficient in and using certain supplements, I was able to change my life around. And I had started a little blog back then, and it was called Blogger, and only right away, as soon as I started writing about natural healing, 400 people came on, and I was really intrigued by that. I was like, wow, people are really taking an interest. So I started my own website, and I thought, wow, if it helps people with epilepsy, this could really help people with all conditions. And I created a natural healing website, and the website blew up. It did extremely well, and hundreds of thousands of people were coming to my website to read my articles, and I started to started to put together the materials that I was writing. I had taken the letters from all those people that wrote to me, the regimens I created for myself to help me get my seizures under control, and I wrote a book called Epilepsy, You're Not Alone, because I realized, for a long time I felt alone until I actually got all those letters from all those people, and I realized I wasn't the only one. So one of the first books I've written was Epilepsy, You're Not Alone, and it was a bestseller. It did really well. And one day I even got an email. Somebody actually emailed me and said that I was reading your book. I found it in Barnes and Nobles, and it saved my life. I was on the verge of suicide. I followed your regimens, and it changed my life completely, and they thanked me. That's when the light really went off, and I realized what my true calling in life was. It wasn't to live in Manhattan and to live this, glamorous lifestyle that I pictured myself having. It was actually to help others like myself. And I continued to write, and I came out with the Complete Herbal Guide, and that did really well. That hit a bestseller, and that was about all different types of herbal supplements, natural living, and alternative medicine. And I continued to write. I talked about the power of positive thinking. I wrote a book on that because, the power of positive thinking is very powerful. And also I wrote books about being kind, having gratitude. And just recently, I just published my book, Empower Yourself. Don't let your conditions empower you. And I created a journal to go with that called the Positivity and Gratitude Journal. And I actually just revised my book, Epilepsy, You're Not Alone, to make it more modernized, because, you know, a lot of things have changed since I wrote the last version. So I updated it, added new things to it. And, you know, that's basically how it all started and began. And I've been, you know, through my journeys, I've met a lot of wonderful people. You know, I even was sent to Washington to speak in front of Congress. And I've been on lots of different talk shows. I've been on the Dr. Oz show several times, many radio shows. I work with Ariana Huffington. And I write for the Thrive Global. I write in her column, and I've been just, you know, doing a lot of advocating work to help others, and that's what my life kind of consumes of.
Well, that's quite a story. That's an amazing background. What are you and thank you for sharing all that with you, and what an amazing journey. What are you focused on right now? I mean you've covered so many amazing topics, and, you know, from epilepsy to the power of positive thinking to overall health, and you know, being an accomplished writer and author, and you know, a guest on all these amazing shows. What's kind of got your focus like right now? Because it sounds like you've just done so much.
Right now, my main focus is about empowerment. I wrote my last book that I just recently launched this year about empowering yourself. Don't let your conditions empower you. And I believe, you know, I want to teach people how to release the power within them. A lot of people, especially people who are suffering from any condition, stress, anxiety, high blood pressure, diabetes, epilepsy, whatever the case may be, you tend to have a lot of obstacles that you have to endure in life. And, you know, sometimes you can fall into those obstacles and you don't know how to get out. And you find yourself in a hole. And a lot of times that leads, pain and suffering could lead, you know, emotionally or physically, can lead to depression. It could lead to anger, frustration, panic attacks, you know. So it's very important that we learn how to overcome obstacles in our life in a healthy way, so we can transition out of these obstacles and move forward. So I teach people in my book, you know, that we all have the ability to overcome any obstacle that we go through in life. It's just learning how to break it down and go step by step. And I teach people in my book how to overcome the obstacles that they endure in life, so they can move forward and live a happy, healthy, and productive life.
That's amazing. Well, I work pretty closely with the Napoleon Hill Foundation, the author of Think and Grow Rich, and about 160 other positive mental attitude books, and you know, taking control of your mindset. So that's very, very cool. And maybe we should talk about collaborating on another book if you want to do something with some of Napoleon Hill's work. That's what's
I'd
been
love to.
a lot of my recent journey has been involving trips out to Wise, Virginia, to the foundation in Don Green. So that's amazing. Well, I know I want to get you and my mom, the head of research, Janet Benton-Gailard, chatting about, you know, herbs and health and epilepsy in children, because I know that you two are cut from the same cloth. So, Mom, you got any questions or any comments on what Stacey had to say? I'm sure you do.
Well, it is fascinating. I totally believe some people are natural healers and they were born that way. And I grew up in the country, as we say, and that was our mindset growing up. We never went to the doctor unless you needed surgery or had a broken arm. And so I grew up always counting on plant-based things and natural healing. And then I swear sometimes our lives are meant to be because of what happens to us. So obviously your story of having seizures young and working through it and helping others defines your life, defines, you know, the journey you're taking. And I pretty much had the same thing too, that I got out of college and doing all these things. And then I had a son who had seizures very young, and I had to figure out a way to cure that. And then I had another son who was in a car accident and was paralyzed, and a husband with cancer given 3 months to live. And so I've cured all those, just working through different diets and herbs and mindset also.
Yeah.
And which led me to our current journey that Justin and I are working on, is that if you're not familiar with it, his son developed autism too, very dramatically. A 2-year-old that was reading and writing and brilliant kid. And then within a day or two, everything was gone. And his IQ was too low to measure. And he was nonverbal and very unhappy. And so I moved out where he was, and did all my things in terms of diet and direct teaching. I'm a psychologist and a certified
Okay.
nutritionist, and a natural healer is basically my sideline thing, or my main thing now. But anyway, so after all the things we did, we saw some progress, but he still had the neurological dysfunction. And
Mm-hmm.
Justin and I were all constantly researching and came across the hemp, and especially the raw CBDA. We call it the fresh squeezed orange juice compared to the Tang or Kool-Aid, because most people totally over process any type of hemp into CBD. And so using the CBDA very quickly, we started at age 4, giving him the raw CBD, whole plant, cold pressed. And by the time he was ready to start kindergarten, he was no longer on the spectrum. He had no OT or PT or speech or any of those workers with him all the time. And he's been in regular school since then, top of his class. Justin's very happy.
Awesome.
He always wanted to coach, and now he's an amazing baseball player. Plays piano by ear, and takes singing lessons and surf. So, and it all to me was based on the raw CBDA. So that's become our journey. It literally with seizures too can repair and regenerate nerve cells. And so we saw that with him, where he had no IQ to measure to being above average and everything. And so that's our mission, is to heal the world. And so it's a very similar mission to yours. So I was very excited to come across you, and very impressed with publishing 20 books. I'm working on a book now, but it's not as easy to write a whole book versus just articles and blogs and things. So
well, maybe that'll be Stacey's next course, is how to write a book, how to write 20 books. So, but what's been your experience with cannabis or hemp and seizures? Is that an area that you've dove into, or is that new to you?
No, cannabis and hemp is very, even medical marijuana is very beneficial for some cases. It's not all cases, but for specific cases for epilepsy, it can be very beneficial. Just recently, NYU does a lot of research on medical marijuana, and they actually, my epileptologist just recently got one of the medications approved that has CBD and in it, and it actually is helping specific type of seizures. There are, it depends on the type of seizures and the type of epilepsy you're dealing with. For specific types of epilepsy and for specific types of seizures, it won't work on you, but it definitely can help. And it also calms the nerves, which is also very helpful. When you have epilepsy, think of your brain as electrical currents, and then it's moving in a nice stream, like a nice sunny day. The clouds are out and they're just kind of flowing through the air, and then all of a sudden you see the dark clouds come in and a thunderstorm strikes, and those lightning bolts come down, and that's kind of how epilepsy is. You're fine, and then the seizure comes, and your brain waves are spiking, and you go into the seizure. So any types of medication that could be common to and help the brain, function in a normal manner, can help with epilepsy. And medical marijuana and CBD and hemp has helped many conditions, and they're consistently doing research, because they've even found it in the world of people who suffer with cancer. It has been very beneficial, and they're looking into different areas on how other ways it could be beneficial as well. It's helped many people with many different conditions. It's also helped people with pain, people who suffer from pain. It blocks certain parts of the brain where your body says, when you're in pain, the body sends signals to the brain to say, hey, I'm in pain. And then you feel the pain, and it blocks those signals. So there's a decrease in the amount of pain that you receive. And so it's helped many people with different types of pain issues with pain management. And and for autism, I just had someone on my podcast that she is a celebrity. She's a Broadway actress in the UK, and her daughter had a very severe case of autism, and she searched and searched and searched, for a solution, and she actually came across certain therapies that actually helped her daughter She went from extreme autism to very minor autism, and she got to the point where she was able to go to school, and she became a engineer. And she now has, is able to communicate with society. She is working in the work field, and she is, and she is she's doing fabulous. She went through college, she got her degrees, and like I said, she became an engineer, and she is doing marvelous. So there are different therapies that can be used also to help people with autism, and they also, they're realizing a lot of people with epilepsy tend to be autistic. They see a correlation with that. Autism and epilepsy have some type of relationship, so they're looking into that also, and it's there's a lot to be learned about autism, and also you have to think too the diet that your child is on too, because diet also plays a big role on how your body reacts and how your brain reacts. So what we put in our bodies also can be something that we also look at as well.
I'll send you some samples of some of our products just because it's whole plant, cold pressed, and it's no one, I mean, I can name on one hand the number of companies that offer it, and no one offers it the way we make it.
Right.
Just the fact that it's cold pressed. I mean, really what we should be doing is eating this plant, just like kale and just like celery. There's over 512 different plant constituents, but the proof's in the pudding. So I would love to send some samples. And I'm sure my mom would love to do some research with you, but I'll let her ask her questions because I'm sure she has some.
No, so I agree with you too. And so I've been studying health and working with neurological issues in children for my whole career. And there is you mentioned the correlation between seizures and autism. Well, one thing in common is they're both neurological damage, they're brain damage. And so, like I say, we read about the seizure research when we were looking at solutions for my grandson. And then at that time, people were giving a lot of kids with autism marijuana. But I said that the THC builds up in the brain. It's not good for a developing brain, and especially if it already has brain damage. And so I don't believe in it for children. But anyway, so I found all the research on that. And the CBDA, if you're a holistic person, if your holistic approach to health, then you're going to have raw, whole plant, cold pressed, which is why we have our unique formulation.
Right.
And a lot of neurologists that believe that so our bodies make cannabinoids. I'm sure you're aware of that, the endocannabinoids. Yeah. And there's one called 2-AG. And many of the top neurologists believe all neurological dysfunction, autism and seizures and all sorts of other things are related to too low of a level of the endocannabinoid 2-AG. And then CBDA uniquely is an analog or a mimic. And so when you take it, it goes to every cell. The A goes to every cell in your body and literally works if there's not enough 2-AG. And so it literally is by research 10 to 100 to 1,000 times more powerful than CBD or THC in these areas. It's just out. And then in America, we can't help overprocessing everything.
And it's terrible.
And when you do that, we all know that if you cook a kale and made it into a cooked kale, it's going to have nowhere near as much benefit as if you ate it raw. And so that's kind of the point that needs to get out there. So I work with people. I do free Zoom consultations kind of around the world at this point. And we start with the CBDA because it literally can regenerate the nerves in the brain that were damaged. And then again, too, as far as you mentioned pain, pain is inflammation plus nerve damage. And so it takes care of both of those. And then the anxiety, it balances it has homeostasis. So it balances our serotonin levels, which also then correlates. So anyway, it's a massive, fascinating area with so much potential. But in America, we tend also just to turn to the pharmaceutical, like Epidiolex, that just works with the two small types of seizures. And my research is around 40% effective. So in other words, most of the time it isn't. And it's quite expensive. I know it's over $100,000 a year. And so our goal is to tell people you just need the raw whole plant. It will work better than just something that's been heated in a synthetic copy of it. So we have great success with seizures of all types, just because you're giving the body what it needs and what it makes. So I'm a very passionate, holistic person. And I've seen, like I say, cures or if we can even say that word, that's the other problem in this field. But anyway, we just see relief from so many people. So anyway, we're very passionate about getting that word out there, that it does work much quicker and you don't have to have a bunch of other things. And then diet's always, that's what I'm writing about right now is diet, because that's a basis for everything we do. And so many Americans have no idea that what we eat relates to our health, which to me is just so basic.
Yes. There's over in the marijuana leaf alone, there's over 100 strands in the marijuana leaf, and each strand can be used for a different type of condition. People don't realize, but there's, areas of the leaf that are good for relaxation. There are areas of the leaf that are good for pain. It's just, it's knowing how to extract the leaf properly. And that's how some of the cannabis dispensaries, do actually distract them, and differentiate the different strains so they're able to help specific conditions. So marijuana and CBD and hemp are very beneficial. And they, even with autism, like you were talking about before, people with autism, they had done studies and they have very, very high Qs, more than the average norm. So their intellectual level goes beyond the regular individual.
And that's interesting because as a psychologist, when I worked and I've been working with autism for actually too many decades to brag about now. But when I was working actively and doing a lot of testing and teaching teachers how to work with autism and things, about 80% of the kids with autism were way below average, low IQ, very low IQs.
Oh, really?
Very much so. And everything gets kind of controversial. I know I've been on some groups from people like from Europe who claim that if you're not super smart, not autism. So there's all kinds of things out there. But no, and most of the kids I work with autism too do have very low speech, low behavior, low mental functioning. So hey, if they are regenerated, like if their nerves are regenerated again, so they can think clearly, you can see people with high IQs, and sometimes they get the IQ back before they get back things like social skills, which are much harder to add in to fine tune social skills, and so you have issues with that because the intellect can come back first if you can repair the brain. And one last thing I find so fascinating about hemp, and it's the only plant that our bodies actually evolved with. The Chinese 8,000 years ago. And so that's the only plant on earth. Our body has receptors and the endocannabinoid system just for it. And just by the power of it, and then keeping it raw, the CBDA is just, like I say, so much more powerful than all the little individual pieces that get popularity. Oh, it's CBG, no, it's this or that. But the CBDA is pretty much always the master. And that's what our products have, 70 to 80%. We keep it raw into that A. But it's hard to get the published work out there. And if I was doing more of a pharmaceutical thing, I'd probably get much more research grants and things like that. But I've always been a holistic person, and I know it works. Actually, what we did with my grandson was actually published in a peer-reviewed medical journal just to show that it's not just a story. And so anyway, we're just very passionate about giving people hope with autism, seizures, and with MS, and with Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. They're all neurological, and we see success with all of those. And so I'm very passionate about getting that truth out there. CBDA combined with the appropriate diet adjustments, you're going to just see amazing results.
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
Well, I'm so glad that we got a chance to cross paths, and you're going to have to teach us your secrets to having as much success as you had. Obviously, you're an amazing writer, accomplished author with all those books, and being on the Dr. Oz show. So you'll have to share some of those secrets with us, so we can combine forces and help give people another option out there for those that aren't getting the results from the current system that they're using, or the current or medicine that they're currently using. So it's just it's an amazing journey. I'm glad we definitely crossed paths. Before we wrap up, how can people find you, or where should they go? And any final comments before we call it a show?
They can find me on StaceyChillemi.com, and that's StaceyChillemi.com. And I also have my website, which is thecompleteherbalguide.com, and that's the blog, and we have thousands of articles on that blog about all different types of topics, from health to fitness, to herbs, vitamins, you name it, it's on there. And we talk about healing the body and eating right, and we have recipes, and we have a lot of information for people to help improve their life and improve their lifestyle of living.
Well, that is amazing, and I'm so happy to meet you. And if you want, like I said, I can connect you with the Napoleon Hill Foundation. We've got a lot of cool collaboration projects going on with down there. And like I said, I'm more than happy to be a guest on your show. And I just continued success for all these books and all this wonderful, publicity tour that you're on. And make sure we'll want to get a photo from you so we can put you on the podcast notes and as well as your mailing address, so we can send you some samples so you can check out this raw whole plant hemp and see how it helps you and those around you. So again, thank you, Stacey, for swinging by. Dan had to pop off, but I know that at the end of every Miracle Plant podcast, we say heal the world, because that's our mission, is to heal the world,
right.
And that's why it's so great that it's aligned. So on the count of 3, we say heal the world, because that's what this podcast is all about, is helping people understand their health, take control of their health. And that's what we're all about. So on the count of 3, let's unmute our mics and say heal the world. And those of you in the audience listening, join in as well. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Heal
the world! Thanks for swinging by the Miracle Plant Podcast. We'll see you next week. Take care.
Thanks for listening to today's show. To check out more great cannabis podcasts, go to PodConx.com. Here's a preview of one of our other shows.
Hey friends, I'm Brannon.
And I'm Saba.
And we are your host of the Cannabis Hangout podcast, an educational platform to connect with the cannabis community and share personal stories while breaking the stigma of marijuana.
Join us every Sunday at 7 p.m. to gain valuable insight with different perspectives from industry leaders, growers, and medical marijuana patients.
This is a place to learn so much from different angles in the cannabis industry. So tune in while we break it all down.